We are back.
Yay.
So you're going to see the live stream button here in a minute,
Got it.
and I'm going to grab the link. Are back.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I always get a little echo with that. Cool. So I'm going to pop this in the chat so that if you want to share it anywhere, you have it and you can. And I'm excited to get into our little chat today. I'm still getting situated here. Yeah, so I know it was kind of impromptu and I just was feeling the energy. And when the energy shows up, I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. I
Yay.
know we get to talk about all the fun things that your work, my work, where they overlap. And I'm excited to just kind of introduce you to YouTube and then viewers and watchers of The Wealthy Creative, and really just see where our conversation goes and what kind of magic we create together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for uh, those of us joining live, feel free to say hello. I'll have a little bit of an eye, not a huge one, on the chat because it is live on YouTube. And then those of you who are joining the replay, you can tell us hello wherever you happen to see this. And let's just get to it. So I know you and I have been chatting for a minute on Instagram, and we're still somewhat new to each other, but I feel pretty comfortable in where our lives kind of overlap in the land of creativity. So I'm kind of excited to just hear from you how you got into this work, because I don't think you and I have talked that much about how
Yeah.
you became such a lover of dance and movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love for those that are listening too, we connected because we both are projectors, if you know human design. And as a
Yep.
projector, we're here to put our light out into the world. And so when I learned about that concept where we're all different, we're all designed differently. And so the idea that if we tell someone to do something, it may work for us, it may not feel good or work for them or make sense to them. And I think when I started leaning into, okay, what things in my life make sense and don't make sense? That's kind of when things started to kind of show up of like, maybe I've been living in this way or with these ideas or thoughts or stories or narratives or reels in my mind, or ways of living. And is that really aligned with me now? And this version of me, it's kind of like you take a moment to go, and I'm still in, we still are here. I feel like we are here to unlearn, especially a lot of the things with our families, generational, school systems, a lot of things that we learn in those systems that actually are not very useful. And two, everything that I share, I want to preface it's a way of thinking, as ways of thinking that I've landed on that have just made so much more sense to me to be more free and clear in my mind and body. And so as I share, if something does not land for someone, throw it away like trash. And if it does, put on like a jacket and walk around the store and shake your booty. I'd love that for you. But again, the idea of anything that I can share is like go to things that make sense to you, and realize that something's going to make sense to all of us differently. And to answer your question, dance and subconscious reprogramming were the two things that truly got me back to me, um, and got me feeling the most aligned to me. And now I've been able to explore that and see that and go, wow, the impact of that. And like, I can't not, it's like peeing. I can't not share this with the women
I
in
like
my
the
world.
analogy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like it's just, or a hose that you can't, it just been tied for too long and then it kind of goes. And so when I noticed that my mental health and well-being and health in general continued to improve along the way, and then started seeing women in my world that, that I found could be useful for that. And then started doing that and seeing complete transformations in front of my eyes. So I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
magic stuff and I'm here for it. And then yeah, we connected and I think very aligned with the way that we show up and create. And we're all here to create, we're all here to spread our magic. That's why we busted through the soul universe world to be a
Mhm.
human in a body.
Yeah,
So
I love your journey of just the stripping back and the sorting through, because that's really unbeknownst to me, I was in a process of awakening as I was kind of entering into academia, or like the traditional, I'm going to go to college and then I'm going to get a job and then I'm going to also buy a house. And like I was doing all that. It was like this parallel for me where it was like I was making art because I couldn't not make art. Like it just literally was something I couldn't not do once I discovered it. But in the art process, I was someone who was constantly deconstructing. I didn't realize at that time that that was very much part of my soul's path. And as a healer and a helper and a helping people take their masks off, I was literally doing it in the art all the time. Like, and I remember having an instructor, we were like polar opposites because her artwork was very kind of detailed and controlled, and mine was just like messy splatter, add anything but the kitchen sink in that I could. But I was also not attached. So I was the type of student that in a critique would just walk up and rip something off of the painting in the middle of the critique if I saw that, oh, this is actually doesn't need to be here. So it's almost like the improvisational component of art was always really important to me. And that has an element of dance to it. It has an element of movement. And it's why I just heard movement is medicine this morning when I woke up and knew that we would be connecting, because I'll share one more tidbit about
Yeah.
my journey, which is, I did end up going to school in a formal way for art therapy and then discovered this whole world. I was just like a kid from Mississippi who ended up in the Big Apple. And I was like, what is this magic called dance therapy and like dance movement therapy? And so at that time, I very much was like, oh, I'm meant to do both. I want to be immersed in all these things. And of course, as academia would have it, it's like, and you can pay for a second master's and it's going to take you 2 more years. And I was like, okay, cut the crap, never mind. I'll do it my way. And that's very much kind of the mantra, if you will, of my life and business, is like what you're talking about, where it's like we end up in these systems that tell us how it has to be. And I'm bumping up against this all the time. Like even in my current art practice and creative practice, I have a circle that I go to, and there's a certain process that they like, and that's kind of like the rules, if you will. And I will find where it is that I'm like, oh, but that rule doesn't work. Like that doesn't work for the growth and the movement and the dance that my being wants. So I actually have to like leave you over here and stay true to me. And I'll let you know when the process works for me again. And so it's just this thing that's kind of never ending. I don't know if you still kind of find the spots where you bump up to this way the world kind of wants you to be versus how your natural being wants to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's also why I landed on what I did, because subconscious reprogramming, and two, I will share, if anyone's interested, I'm trained in RRT, rapid resolution therapy. The founder John Connolly, and his way of thinking is what completely transformed my way of how I think. And so that was a huge part of my journey too, because it's not the normal way that society, I mean, this idea of this word normal, I don't know about you, but I'm really over it. I actually don't want to be normal.
Yeah, there's no
I
normal.
I think normal is you're unwell, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're sick,
Mm.
you're, all these different things. And so I've left the normal club a long time ago, and I think that's why we've connected. We both have, and I think that to be an outlier is really useful in our world today, because if we really want to create positive change in the world, we got to first remind ourselves of our soul, which is just love and light, right? And remind people who they are is the same exact thing. We're all mirrors of each other. And so from that space, I think that's where art comes. That's where it's where heart comes, right? I don't think there's a some wording there. And I think as women, especially in feminine, however we want to label that or define that, is we're here to bring in more of that to the world. I think that's like really where healing comes in for the world. And so yeah, like you noticing what came to mind actually the other day. I remember I was teaching Abundance, which is the class that I do also that brings in mind shift work and dance somatic embodiment practice. And I was teaching little small sessions of it at this festival, and then there was also yoga mixed in the mix of it too. And I was taking a class and realized again that it is so useful. I love yoga. I do it most days. But like what you said too, is there's a certain kind of instructor, a certain kind of
Sure.
way that feels good, that feels more open. And because I was doing it and it felt so rigid and masculine for me, which I could easily
Mm.
drop in my masculine. For me, it's
Sure.
more open to the feminine. And so I was like, yeah, I've come a really long way where like I was yogaing and I was like really like, focused and like taking it so seriously. And what
Mhm.
dance
Mhm.
opened up for me is it's not serious, it's play.
Mm.
Um, but I can also tell you there are people in the dance world that are taking it very seriously and are
Oh,
almost
sure.
yoga. So it's like
Yeah.
it's not even about the actual practice of movement because you say there's some people like, well, yoga, I'm so playful with it. Like, great. I invite every woman, whatever you're doing, how can you bring in more play to it? Because that's what I had forgotten about. That's what I'd forgotten about.
Mhm.
And if I'm forgetting about that, then I'm forgetting about the 7-year-old me that is just light and love before the world got a hold of her. If I'm forgetting that piece, then
Mhm.
I'm forgetting me. And so
Mhm.
go back to your play when you can. Even for you, it's like even the moments you're like, well, I have a full-time job and family. Take the few minutes to do something that lights you up. And I can't tell you what that is. For me, it is dance. For me, it is connecting with loved ones. For me, it's getting outside, walk. Movement is huge for me. That's for me. That's what works for me. Find what works for you and makes sense for you. And yeah, bring in more play. You will see the world. I mean, even after this stream, I invite people to get up, play a song, move around, right? Or get outside and move, or call a friend, or do something to get present with her play, with her connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important overlap in our work as well, is the play element, because I know for my clients, they tend to be so passionate about what they do that it slides into seriousness.
Yeah.
And that's actually a piece, with my work as a spiritual business mentor, that's, I'm kind of like an investigator, if you will, that's keeping an eye out for where there's this clenching happening, because that's the opposite of play. And to your point, it won't be the same for everyone. We're all unique. And even for me and for you, I'm sure too, it's not one thing all the time. It's that dance and that listening to where your energy is currently. So that's not like a one rigid structured thing. And yes, some people are more disciplined in that way. So they happen to love, and have a lifelong affair with one modality. But for a lot of us, it's not like that. It is like a polyamorous relationship with our play, and we're multidimensional, and we go into all these different love affairs with different types, whether it's poetry or right now I'll say I was drumming. I left my drum in the national forest after I just got it. It was a handmade. Luckily, I know the maker, so another one's in the works, but right now it's drumming for me, and but it's a dance between drumming and poetry and paint and dance and like whatever the thing. And I think what I like to remind clients is that it's actually not the activity. And that's why what you're saying about yoga makes so much sense. The same thing with like Pilates or exercise. It's not the thing, it's the energy with it. And play is an attitude. So I know for me, there were times where I actually started Pilates long before I discovered yoga, but I was like a rigid person about it because I was just discovering art. I was just starting to open some of these control patterns and shed some of that. And but then you put me in rollerblades and I was just like a child. Like I just can't. So there was this juxtaposition, and I could see, and this was a very early version of me, but I could see how something both intended to provide, exercise, movement, vitality, move energy and all that, but approached from two very different energies, because one had the element of play and joy and fun, and the other one had the energy of get your ass on the mat and like pump 100 times and go and don't stop. And the other one could be fun and playful too. I just wasn't approaching it that way. And so I'm really passionate about supporting clients to shift in specifically in their business, but of course it's life and business, but to move them into this place of play within the business, because that's actually going to allow it to have the magnetism, have the momentum, because it's not sustainable, tongue twister, if you're actually coming at it from that constricted, closed, tight energy. It's already clamping off, which is like suffocation, to the expression.
And how do you give from that? It's forced, and then people feel if everything is energy around us, right?
Mm.
Then if we're not in good energy for that, then yeah, it's gonna be felt. I mean, again, if we took away our bodies, we're just floating souls, you know? And so people feel that, and that's what people want. That's why people connect with you. I guess so many people like it's just something about you, or whatever, or like your Instagram page, it's different, it's this, it's that, it's this. And it's because I'm just connecting to soul and then moving from that space. And you're right, like it's not like, oh, 24/7 I'm a soul floating. No. But I can notice now, like when I'm getting too serious, or like I'm noticing these things coming up, and then I have ways of shifting my mind with the subconscious reprogramming aspect. And then I get into my play, which, is dance and other things that I do. And again, it's just a reminder. It's just a
Mhm.
reminder. And so even before you're about to having to go send those emails, or before you're like, all right, I'm going to go work on my sales page, or before I'm going to go and take some client calls or make some messages, or do something for you first. Get into the energy of that. And what is that for you? And it can be like a 5 minute, it could be a deep breath in, and exhale, think release, and like shake it off and do a little shoulder shimmy or something. I mean, really, it doesn't have to be so, like a 10-hour regimen, which I feel.
Right. That's one of the things that there's like a misinformation, if you will, like people who do have a lot of rituals and embodiment practices and stuff. What I've noticed is that it can tip into avoidance. And so that's like really, and that's just a place where you have to be like really honest with yourself, like where you're starting to, you can take vacation after vacation after vacation, and eventually it's not going to or feel fulfilling. Eventually it's going to be like this empty experience because your body does want some element of challenge. It's not all flow, for lack of a better word, and that's really not the best word, but it's like there's a delight that happens even when you think of a child. The child loves a challenge. It loves to learn, if it's building blocks or if it's being chased around the block or whatever. It's like that feels good. So when there's just kind of this tipping point of all self-care, all embodiment, I've seen where it's coming from a little bit of fear about the capacity to create.
Right. Both are fear, right? Going hard and being like, because I have to achieve something or whatever, right? And also,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm gonna do this because it feels good. And I'm like, that is like it's both, maybe in that same arena and looks different, right? Because someone's gonna go to the thing that they find more safe. Are you again more in
Mm-hmm.
your masculine and finding it more safe just to do, go, 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 like hamster on a wheel? Or are you finding it more safe to be like, oh, I'm gonna just like,
Lounge.
around and lounge and like, cause life's fine and I don't have to, it's just all right. First, it's just being aware of it and not actually making any judgment at all toward it. Just literally
Sure.
being consciously aware. Like you zoom out and you're watching yourself doing it and being like, is this useful? Is this
Mm.
amount of self-care useful? Is this amount of like this hustle thing, which I think is crap? Is that useful? And what you had said too about the idea that I really like to debunk about things, especially with the school system. I used to teach in schools for a very long time, different schools, and notice the brokenness of the systems. And eventually, it was just like, I can't anymore. I'm done getting guilt tripped. But the kids love you, and like, what are they gonna do without you, and all
Oh
that
gosh.
stuff. Yeah. But I will say that the kids do like a challenge, but then again, they learn from a young age that if they're going to be challenged, like if it's a hard project and they might get an F, then they're a
Mm.
failure. Like,
Yeah,
where did
sure.
they learn that from? And so there was actually this study where if they had to pick what project to do and they were going to be graded on it, that they would pick the simpler product. They would pick the easier thing, even though they weren't as interested in it, because they
Oh,
were seeing
interesting.
like, I want to get the good grade. And so they weren't
Sure.
following their desire. Like, well, that looks really interesting and cool. But like I
Mhm.
could probably get like I would might fail. I might fail. I might not get a good
Yeah.
grade, a D and F. It goes on my report card. Mom gets mad. My future sucks. Like, and so again, this whole idea of even grading in the school system in that regard, where it's like, what if we just said follow your creativity and you're gonna be graded on, and not even graded, but you're gonna be, just as long as you're doing it and you're staying with it and you're leaning into the questions and they're seeing your curiosity with it. Like, what if we graded based off of that,
Yeah,
and we
you
didn't
bring
learn
up a really good point in that way, because I know for me, my creativity did not get like infused into something that would be potentially what's the word? for lack of a better word, monetized. It
Yeah.
was like, it was just, my creativity came through my wardrobe and through decorating my room and things like that. It was like my academic self was very split off from my creative self
Right.
because in school it was just like memorization, like memorization and getting the grade, and there were creative classes and that kind of thing that I got to tinker with, and that allowed that part to start coming to the surface. But you bring up a really great point, because I think for a lot of people there's so much conditioning around the word creative,
Hmm.
and I don't talk about this that much anymore because I was an art therapist for like 15 years, and it was just something that like I was talking about all the time, so it just doesn't come up as much now. But you're seeing it more and more in the industry where people are talking about everyone's a creative, because now we're in this place of really creativepreneurship, because online is so accessible to everyone that they can, step into their own business and find ways to monetize the things that they love. But if you came from a traditional, excuse me, education system, that's very much not encouraged unless you went to like a nature school or
Yeah.
some kind of school that like literally you're self-led and you create your own curriculum, which I love, by the way. I just love reading and learning about that. In another life I would be a teacher. But I just, yeah, I love what I do too much to have two careers. But I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, and even too, I mean, if beyond the school systems, it could be our family dynamic too, right? You work hard, you go to college, you go to, I mean, or maybe not, maybe none of that at all, you work for our family and do this. I mean, a lot of this is like just again unraveling like what you're supposed to be doing, what society's expecting of you, and saying like, what if none of that mattered? What would I be doing right now? What would that be looking like? And I think
Mm.
within that, when you decide that, there is a form of play and creativity that has to come and pour out from that space because it lights you up, you
Yeah.
know? When we think about anything that we're doing that's lighting us up, it's because it's a reminder, like we literally are a light in that moment. And so it's not about, I love doing with people, like think about something that you really look forward to in your day, or like a moment that you're like, oh, it feels so good. So if everyone can just think about that for a moment, like what comes to mind? So it could be like drinking a nice drink or petting a dog or getting some sunlight on your face or your walk, or maybe it's a movement practice or talking to someone you love or a hug from someone. Um, just thinking of like a moment, journaling, sitting on your couch or a certain spot in your space. Maybe you like to drive, just one moment that you're just like, that this is nice. And just notice that moment and see yourself in that moment, even right now. Our mind creates these movie reels already. And noticing that it's not actually the thing that you're doing, it's you. You are that. You are that. However, we want to label it. Words are kind of silly sometimes, but just get into like that actual energy of that. And that you can go back to that anytime. It's always there. It's not because of that thing. And so it's freedom and knowing it's not that thing. It's just how I tap into me, into the remind her of this presence, of this power, of this energy. And just notice what color shows up for you of this power, energy, intention. Take a deep breath in and see that color. Then exhale, release. Breathe in that color. Exhale. And just notice. Notice her doing that thing and then remove that thing and just notice her. Maybe even her as a 7-year-old in awe of you right now. Surviving all that she has, overcoming all that she has, just being here right now. No future, no past. Just here. And again, see that color and just follow your breath for a moment. There's going to be something that comes up, the whisper of you, something that that 7-year-old wants to tell you or share, or that color wants to represent for you, and just notice. The color fill up every cell, muscle, organ, absorbing what's useful and releasing what is no longer. Just like the breath, absorbing and releasing, releasing and absorbing. And go ahead and start swaying the body if you can a little bit side to side. Getting all that through. Maybe roll the neck a little bit and shoulders, flick the fingers. And taking your time when you're ready to come on back.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if you were going fully into one. So even before you went into like a guided meditation there, I was experiencing the joy of a conversation that I had yesterday that's been integrating over the last 24 hours. And I had a conversation this morning that helped me integrate that, where it was just so helpful to see and feel the joy in my system of helping someone just they're at the very beginning of their business. And so technically, like on paper, when we talk about our ideal client and our dream client, she's not technically that, but that's where there's like a shift between the mind's definition and the body's definition. And it's just really, really juicy territory for me right now, because who knows, maybe a new offer or something comes out of that, because I felt the joy so much. And it was I don't know what the word is, I guess like a confirmation or a validation of just how much I am in my truest self in my business, because I can talk about a lot of things with people. I've lived 1,000 lives. I've been in the industry for a long time. I've been an entrepreneur for a decade. So I can talk about a lot of things, but there was this like experience of kind of like being here and enjoying it. Like there's nothing good, there's nothing bad. We're just here and we're in a rose garden and it was gorgeous. But then as soon as we start to talk about the business, it's like the little tilt in my body. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Like, it just feels so good. Like I just love business
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
as the canvas,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people, that it doesn't actually matter what level of business they are when
Yeah.
there's like an opportunity to serve, regardless of whether they're a paying client or a not paying client or a friend it's just that is like the playground.
Yeah, and this may not be a little, well, I say this PG, I think also too, if we're talking about feminism and all that stuff as well, but it's like when you explain that, it's kind of like an orgasm.
Climactic,
Right.
yes.
But
Yeah.
something I've been really sitting with is the idea that I think we strive for the orgasm, the actual like but
Mm.
but what I'm actually really interested in is the afterward of the going,
Mm.
ah, you know. Like,
Yeah.
I think if we're always trying for the we're it's like the dopamine hit. Like we're gonna get disappointed.
Mhm.
'Cause, I mean, if you were in a continual orgasm,
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, I
yeah.
mean, you would
Too
just be like,
much.
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's ever been, they've done any study about someone that's able to do that, but I don't think that would be useful. But at the idea that afterward part, like I noticed like that just because it's you receiving, but also giving, but also being, and like I just think about that of the because I think what that joy that you're experiencing, you're like even after the call, 24 hours later, it's like,
Oh yeah, we're still going.
yeah, that. And you're not at that high like, oh, but you're being
No,
like,
no, no.
this feels yummy. This feels, yes,
Like
yes,
sustainable, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a big part of why I love the like talking about the tantric art of life and business, because I've done in the past it was coming because we're always evolving and it's getting deeper and richer, and So there was a time when I was talking about it through the lens of foreplay in the sense that we were just talking about this, right? And then it's this slow, gradual, and you want to have that foreplay to, if you translate it to the lens of like archetypes in business, it's like warming up the warrior to get into the flow of your business. But this is a juicy territory and it's a fun conversation because it's not something that I've talked about a lot in terms of like the afterglow, right? The like having that, because you come to this and it is very true, like in the tantric art, where it is that you're not going for an orgasm, you're not going for
Yeah.
the climb, you're literally there in the experience to see how long can I enjoy this experience without needing to go somewhere else. And that capacity to build that level of pleasure and that level of play, I mean, that's a lifelong journey. That's something that I'm still unwrapping every single day. And it's like, the discovery is never ending, like you're discovering every day, like, wow, whoa, okay, I can tolerate more joy. And you hear that word tolerate in there because I was conditioned
Yes.
not to feel that because that was too much, that was too big, that was overwhelming to somebody else. And I took that on. So it's like a whole lifetime of taking that sweater off.
Yes. Yeah, and that's where my subconscious reprogramming stuff, because you're gonna hit up on some of those edges, and it's like, well, then what do I do there? And
Mm,
some people, traditional therapy can help with that. For me, it didn't, and so that's kind of where
mm.
I was like, does it have to still be so hard and feel like a band-aid and whatever, or is there action that can be done that I can be shifting that much quicker than 10 years later, or oh, I finally one day got it after all the pain and suffering of like going over my trauma or whatever it may be, because all of it's not yours.
Absolutely,
It,
yes.
it was just and even to this idea, I was in the mindfulness meditation world for a long time. Not that I'm not still, but some things just don't resonate with me, of the idea of like let go. I'm like, well, I didn't put this backpack on myself. Someone literally, like literally got put on me. But I'm like, oh yeah, I want to like feel like shit, today, and even this idea, and you're like, well, just love yourself. And it's like, if it was that easy, like, oh yeah,
Mm,
okay, I now love myself. Let's go. It's not. And that's again what subconscious reprogramming is so valuable. At least again, it made sense to me. Again, find what makes sense to you, where we can really get in there and find. I think you earlier had said something about, I forgot what word you used, but for me, I would call it a stuckness. Like you're
mm.
noticing this thing. Because even with dance, right? Perfect example that someone's like, oh, I want to go dance class. Cool, that'd be fun. Like, why not try something new? And someone's like, that is the scariest thing to me. Like, I'm so scared. I
Mm.
had a woman, say today about how like I want to come to a class, but I have a fear of people behind me for certain different reasons. And what, it's like there's these things. And if we can
Oh
shift
yeah.
that, then you can actually go, right? Again, it's that hose that has a knot in it. How can we
Sure.
undo the knot, and so that your water can fall, go more smoothly? Um, as well as you said about the foreplay and all that too. It's like, yeah, because I think about how you have to, you get to be really present in the foreplay, and you get to be really present in the afterward, because once you hit that moment, it's like full presence, but you kind of like lose, there's no control. But what I think earlier, going back to how, if you're in the hustle, or you're in the like avoidance or whatever you want to call that, it's like, how unpresent are you getting in
Sure.
those spaces? Because it's like, if you had presence, I'm not sure you'd be in the hamster wheels of those two. And so I think it's always asking us to get present, you know, slow down. That's a big one for me. The idea of like slowing down, getting present, taking a pause for a breath. Even what we just did right now, like the viewer, like it's like, when's the last time that you did something like that? And just got quiet and just listened, and heard a message, saw yourself as a 7-year-old, like checked in with that feeling of joy. I mean, it sounds like you did that so beautifully from yesterday, and like you're noticing that, like you're really present with it. But not everyone, that's a skill, it's a muscle to grow.
Yeah, I think it's a life, I won't say a lifetime, but many, many years because
Yeah.
it did start very early for me of looking for I don't think mindfulness was popular yet to be called mindfulness, but it
Yeah.
was like I was reading about Taoism and looking at what are these practices, and so that started very young for me because I needed it. And I think that we're very resilient no matter what environment we find ourselves in. There's a beautiful divine life force pulling us towards health and pulling us towards growth and resiliency and vitality if if we're willing, like if we're willing to go there. So no matter what the environment, it's kind of like I have the image of a sprout coming through the concrete. Have you ever seen those? And you're
Oh, I love that.
like,
Yeah.
like, how do you do that? And then like
Yes.
I just love
Oh, I
the
love that.
determination
Grit. It's
of that
grit. Yeah.
sprout to find
Resilience,
its way
grit.
through the concrete. And I think that, in the land of somatic experiencing, they will say like the larger the trauma, the larger capacity for creativity, like it's an arc that swings both ways. And so I feel for me, creativity is just a very, very meaningful part of my story and like my why and my choosing to be who I am and how I am and leading and all those things, that the like true creativity, like the kind of creative spark that creates things that have never been created for, just simply can't happen without the presence that you're describing, right? Like where it's just everything in your experience is improvisational and you're literally birthing a moment that wouldn't be otherwise because you're so present to it. And yeah, for me, that's just very, very life-giving. And when I pull these two like passions together, I'm talking about creativity, I'm talking about business, and those two things together are just, because of our current conversation, it's like just orgasmic to witness other people and use their capacity and their creativity in the art of business is just really, really beautiful. And there was something you were saying, um, yeah, just like slowing down. I think that that's been honestly a theme in my life for at least 20 years that I was conscious. It was happening before that, but it's like one of my very first talks was on the topic of rushing to relax and watching myself rush to relax and then becoming incredibly humored by this person that is rushing to get to a meditation or rushing to get to a massage.
Yes,
And I'm
yoga
like,
class, right? It's like you're rushing just to like feel better about you rushing to the class. Like you might as well just not
yeah,
have gone to the class and then not.
yeah, yeah. So I'm now someone who attends way less meditation, yoga, whatever. Like I'm someone who does it when that's what my body tells me to do versus like, kind of the prescriptive, I need to do these things to be healthy, to blah, 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 because that technically was just another layer of conditioning
Absolutely.
the healthy
I
girl.
need to, I have to. Because really what you're saying is I'm getting intentional. Like, what do I value? I don't value rushing to a yoga class. I actually don't even really want to drive to it or whatever. And what is really getting me there? What's the story narrative in my mind? Because I had a lot of that too. I mean, I was an overachiever, doing crazy, like working out all the time. I mean, my past too, like exercise addiction, eating disorder. I mean, all these things of control and of
Yeah.
go, go, go. And why? Because I was living in a masculine headspace where,
Sure.
it's like you go every day. You don't stay, and women, as I'm continuing to learn, is we don't, I mean, literally have like a 28-day cycle versus a man is a 24-hour clock every day. Like, that's why you're seeing them be like, yep, every day they can go and do the same things. And it again, not our fault. We've learned and been conditioned of like we work like a man every day. Like, no, 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 no. That is not useful. And we're starting to wake up to that too. And so it's getting intentional, it's getting present. What do I actually need as a woman? Because we weren't actually taught that ever in school. Our parents didn't know, the females in our life didn't know these things that we know now. And it's such a gift that we get to know these things now and dive deeper into it and understand our desires more so because we didn't have time for that. We were surviving then. Now we get to thrive. That's what I want for every woman. It's like, what does your thrival stage look like? And let's get her there. Let's get her to that version of her. Because it has been so lost in the controls. Control is just an illusion, but we do that. I've noticed in the last even few weeks, a lot of women that it's just like, yeah, it's this pressure, this continual internal pressure. Um, Fear comes up a lot. I mean, and all these things I work with women like not feeling good enough. Yeah, the fears, the judgments, the people pleasing, the overachieving, the perfectionism, the control. I mean, you name it, whatever, cake you want to slather
All the
on.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all from that space of what's been prior, put there. And so it's again unraveling that, getting more intentional, getting more present so you can hear. For me, I had major anxiety and realizing that my anxiety was just my potential. If I can put
Mhm.
that toward things that are actually useful, then all these mind ways that were, really trapping me. It was the puppet had me, I didn't have the puppet. And so now
Yeah.
I get to have the puppet and go, actually, no, not useful. And I can work with it so much better today than I ever was able to before. And I want
Yeah.
that for every woman.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important reminder too, because the people watching this, a lot of times the people in my world struggle with perfectionism and recovering perfectionism. And so one thing that you were saying that hits home for me is like the gift and the beauty that come from this unraveling that influence relationships. Like in my life, for example, my mother, my father, they benefit from the deep work that I've done. They actually experience a freedom and a lightness that they didn't have before, just from some of the things you're talking about, like witnessing and experiencing me be less rigid, less controlled, less constricted, allows them to soften and lighten and relax and experience less anxiety. And it's just a really, really cool thing to watch the generations and the ripple effect. And that's just in the tiny, like familial circle, and then there's the societal circle, and then there's the beyond that. So it's like the work that we do is really, really impactful, regardless of how few or how many people you work with. Like the ripples are big when you choose to do the work for yourself. And I know that was something that I believed for a long time, even as a baby newbie therapist. I was looking at like, yes, I can help these people, absolutely, but it's going to be more impactful that I'm doing my work, like as a therapist,
Mhm.
not staying on the pedestal and like helping people from that savior complex, but more so like getting as close to that authentic self and stripping back the layers and being a real person in the room, the same person I am at home as I am in the office,
Office.
wherever I go. Like that's actually going to make a bigger ripple effect than me, whatever, doing 1,000 continuing education credits and studying new modalities and, all the things.
Yeah, which we can do. I too, for me, like used to go dive into all the things, want to learn all the things, and it's like when was there room for me to just know see what's showing up for me? If I'm always listening to all the podcasts and people and things and reading this,
Right.
doing that, and like that course and that course and that course, there's a time and place for it. I think it's so cool we're in a world we can just learn like anything. But also like how much of the time are you like pulling back and letting it like sponge in,
Mhm.
and then going and then what's coming from that?
Well,
You know,
yeah, and being, to circle back to the creativity, asking, and what do I want to create with this? Because I think
yeah, yeah.
that's probably one of the most fruitful things for me as someone who previously had supervisees and allowed them to get their, um, how do you say that? Like feet wet in a sense, like baby entrepreneurs who are learning to build their own business. It was like, very, very rewarding to be able to support them in creating their own modality and
Yeah.
bringing their interest into a synthesis that allowed them to create their own brand and their own modality and their own version versus, people can be put on pedestals if you're still in the student mode. If you're still in the, I have to get something else. I have to learn something else. I need something else. That's coming from a lack versus, oh, I'm already doing this really amazing thing. And it will be so cool to hear what else is out there.
Yeah. And also the idea of like I think that also it can overwhelm some women when they're like, but I still don't know. Like, okay, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what am I meant to do? I don't know. Cause I was there and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. But when I started to let go of needing to know
Mm-hmm.
and getting into, again, I think dance also helped me with that. Again, get just going, you know what, pause. Because sometimes I'll do things, I'll dance or I'll do, I mean, for me, a movement's a big thing where, and then also the pausing and like that I'll get these ideas like, whoa, like just give some more space for those whoas, those ahas, those things to come
Yeah.
up. If I'm sitting down with you, okay, what do you want to create today? Like that isn't, I don't know if anyone really works that way. Maybe a few great people do, but it's like, don't rush her. Slow down.
Right.
Don't rush
Right.
her. Notice what lights you up. Go there. Notice what, like excites you. Notice what feels good to do. Because again, we were not taught that like you doing those things that feel good are gonna create some really cool magic. It's
Right.
quite the opposite. Push through.
Yeah,
Go
that's a
harder.
beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful point because it brings us back full circle to like the energy behind the thing.
Yes.
So, like I was talking about rollerblading versus Pilates, or it's like both are exercise, but very different energies behind one and the other. And so, if we're taking that into finding what it is that we want to do in the world, or even if we've been doing many things in the world and we're entering into a new season of like, okay, well, now what does it look like? This is a very important reminder of literally anchoring into how does it feel in the body? Like, how does it feel to explore this versus that? And that's going to give you a lot of information, just the exploration.
Yeah, and I would invite that person's feeling that, like for you, it would be to go do the Pilates or go do put the rollerblades on. If you're feeling this, I mean, everything's energy, so it's stuck energy. Go put the rollerblades on, or
Mhm.
even see it in your mind. Do that thing. We did that exercise earlier. Go back to that thing, even right now or after this call, and then afterwards, see how you feel and see what you notice popping in. Right? Not
Yep.
from a like, let me go to that Pilates class where I know I'm gonna be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like at
Right.
least not every time, but explore the dance of life, right? Explore what's going to come up when you put on those rollerblades and just go and just pause for a
Yeah,
moment.
and I will give one little, I don't know what to call this, like a disclaimer
Yeah,
for the woman watching this that is a little bit more in the mind and is still somewhat in that conditioned state. What we're saying is very, very simple. And sometimes because it's so simple, the mind wants to override it as too simple, but it's literally that simple. Like I did a activation and audit call recently for someone's business, and we're exploring like what's happening, and then versus where does your being want to go. And it really is as simple as feeling the vibration that was rising when we explored the unknown and the new and the creating something that hasn't yet been created versus I could just get more of the same. And there was just like a tone that was immediate and obvious, but the mind sometimes wants to complicate that. And I
yeah,
would just invite you, if you're watching this and you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, 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 I've heard this before. This is so simple. Sometimes, sometimes the truisms are so simple because they're true. And literally slowing down, as Mariel was talking about, and being with the body, sometimes there's fear around that because of whatever patterns you've created to run from it. There may be uncomfortable, sticky spots in there too. And that's the value of having a mentor. That's the value of having, resources like Marielle and me, and navigating all of that because we have done the unraveling. And so it is very helpful to have mentors. I know I've had mentors for a very long time, and I love having that. I love the feeling of being supported. And it's a big part of why I have the wealthy creative movement, is because I was someone who was very committed to, I'm going to be a creative. I'm not going to be a starving artist. I am going to afford support in my life. And it was coming from that place of like, of just knowing that I wanted to have a spacious lifestyle with support without sacrificing the creativity and the art and all of that. And so, yes, I encourage people to reach out and get support if it is that you are bumping up against those spots where it's so simple that your mind wants to push it away.
yeah, and
That's a really good spot to be curious about.
yeah, and you wouldn't go to the dentist and have the dentist be handing you the things. Be like, all right, go get at it. Go at your mouth. You'd be like, what kind of dentist am I at? So
Yeah,
it's like, no, you want to go and the dentist to know and have the skills to be able to get in there and fix some things and move some things and make your, teeth look great, right? We wouldn't expect that. And so sometimes we as women too, like I gotta figure it all on my own. But I
yeah.
say get in energy with women that you light up in their energy, or it make their energy make sense to you. And what's so cool, there's so many of us that's like, find
Mm.
that person that just like, I really like, there's something about them, they whatever, surround yourself. I mean, you are who you surround yourself with, you know? And so get around people and things that make sense to you, right? And her play. She's the player here. Have her play and have her connect. And, you know, those people that you're working with, they're going to help, you know, co-creating is a beautiful thing. And I think as women, it's good to lean into that more. There's power in that. That's why women's circles were way back in the day. But finding ones that make sense to you, you know, or a coach
Sure.
or a mentor or a way of thinking, that lights her up. That reminds her of who she really is.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation. Is there
That's
anything
so
else
wonderful.
that you want to get into before we start to wrap up? Is there
I
anything you
think
want to
that's
share?
good. I want, yeah, people just like to take in. I know we shared so many nuggets and so many, you know, I'm intending that this was useful and people can come back and share their experiences. I'd love for, yeah, the viewers to share what things showed up for you, what color showed up for you, what message showed up for you. I always love hearing, and people can totally reach out to me, and share their experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll make sure include your contact information when replays go out. If you're watching this and you're catching the replay, please say hello. Let us know what you're taking away. Let us know what nuggets are landing. Let us know what shifts and questions you might have. I'm sure this will be in a variety of places. So wherever you see it is a good spot to connect. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing our journey together as it's somewhat at the beginning. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Yes. Thank you so much
All
for
right.
having me. You're amazing.